Hey, my name's Izzy, this is Rolling Virtual Cards, coming at you with another Commander deck build. This time we got Gollum, Patient Plotter, Sack. Another Gollum, another week. If you watched my Commander review this week, you saw my Lord of the Rings, Sam, and Frodo build. Well, not build, but like critique of the Commander itself. And with that, I said to let me know who you liked better, and I'd let you know if you were right or wrong. And so I figured I'd tell you at the end of the video, and I forgot because of ADHD. So I'm going to tell you now. It's Sam. Obviously. Frodo sucks. Comparatively. I don't hate Frodo, but Sam's so much better. Sam's probably one of the best characters written, both in book and in movie. Especially in the movie. So good in the movie. That all being said, let's hop into this awesome Gollum deck that's not at all similar to the previous Gollum deck. No, it's not a similar deck at all. If you like Gollum and Andy Serkis, especially if you like Andy Serkis, hit the subscribe button. I love Andy Serkis. Gollum Patient Plotter is 1 in a black. Let's get a little close. There we go. 1 in a black for a 3/1 halfling horror. When Gollum Patient Plotter leaves the battlefield, the ring tempts you. For a black, you can sacrifice a creature to return it from your graveyard to your hand. Activate only sorcery. So, here. This is the ring tempts you. We gotta talk about it because it's a part of the deck. The ring tempts you. So the ring tips you. You go through this. So the first time you choose a ring bearer. So in this case, the Gollum or anyone else. Probably anyone else because Gollum will constantly be sacked, so give it to something else. And it's a legendary, and it can't be blocked by creatures with greater power. So if you have like a 1/6 or a 1/3, it can't be blocked by like 2 or higher, so it won't die. And then when it attacks, the second time this happens, and this will go up as long as the ring tempts you, and you can select another creature to be a hit. It'll just keep going up until it gets to 4. And even if you don't have something to go or the ring bearer dies, this still stays up there. The ring tempting stays. So the ring tempt level 2, whenever the ring bearer attacks, draw a card and then discard a card. So this just gives you some looting abilities, which isn't awful. And then at level 3, when the ring bearer becomes blocked by a creature, that creature's controller sacrifices it to combat. So this really allows you to kind of hit people that don't want to lose their creatures. And then whenever a ring bearer deals combat damage to a player, each opponent loses 3 life. That's kind of like the big thing here. Being able to eventually get to 3 and go, hey, let's just slowly drain my opponents is kind of fun. Being a 3/1, yeah, Gollum can lose the ring very easily. That's kind of the joke. If you choose Gollum as the ring bearer, he will die. And then the ring will tempt you because you'll lose the ring. So if you choose to put the ring bearer on the ring on him, you'll attack, and they're like, well, you're a 3/1. I can just block you with my 2/1. You're a terror. Whereas Frodo is a 1/3, right? So it's small, but you can block it. So it's kind of funny. He's meant to die with the ring, and then he died. The ring goes to something else, and then you sacrifice it and bring Gollum back. So it's kind of a fun idea. I like it. I think he's kind of a fun Gollum, but let's get into the card by card. Terrasot, Doom of Fools, is 4 in a black for a 4 loyalty legendary planeswalker. Sot. +2, you make 2/0/1 black Thrall creature tokens. They're easy things to sack to Gollum. +1 for 1. It's +1. You may sacrifice with a creature or planeswalker. If you do, draw 2 cards. Then draw another card if you sacrifice a permanent other than your commander. A permanent that was your commander. So since Gollum wants to die, sacrificing him to Tevis, great. That's a +1 that draws you 3 cards. And then -10, gain control of all commanders. Put all commanders from the command zone onto the battlefield under your control. So that just allows Tevis to just go, boom, everything's mine. So great kind of control piece. A way to win the game, honestly. But just mainly it's here for that +1 and +2. Being able to have something to sack for Gollum to get back and something to sack Gollum to. And now a lot of things to sack Gollum to. Bloodsoaked Champions, 1 black for a 2/1 human warrior that can't be blocked, and it has raid for 1 in a black to return it from your graveyard to the battlefield. Activate only if you attack this turn, and then you can keep sacking it with your commander to keep getting it back and having the ring tempt you and stuff. And Carrion Feeder is 1 black for a 1/1 zombie. Carrion Feeder can't be blocked, and you can sacrifice a creature and put a 1/1 counter on Carrion Feeder, so it can get really big and you can keep sacking stuff, and so it can take people out. Dockside's Chief is 1 black for a 1/2 human chief or citizen. For 1 in a black, sacrifice an artifact or creature, draw a card. This is a good way to just draw cards and kind of get that card advantage as you want. Not as good as Tevish, but still there. Persistent Specimen is 1 black for a 1/1 skeleton. For 2 in a black, you can return persistent specimen from your graveyard to the battlefield. This is just another thing to sack to your Gollum. Vasiasir is 1 black for a 1/1 vampire wizard, and you can sacrifice a creature to scry 1. This is good card advantage. Blood Artist is 1/1 black for a 0/1 vampire. Whenever it or another creature dies, target player loses life and you gain a life. Since you're sacrificing a lot of creatures, it's a good way to just drain your opponents. Bloodgeist Ghast is 2 black for a 2/1 vampire spirit, and it can't be blocked, or it can't block, and it has haste as long as an opponent has 10 or less life, and landfall when it lands to the battlefield under control, return it from the graveyard to the battlefield. Clattering Augur is 1 in a black for a 1/1 skeleton shaman. It can't block, and when it enters the battlefield, you draw a card and lose a life, and for 2 and 2 black, return it from your graveyard to your hand. It's just another simple way to be able to get stuff. It does draw you cards, though, which is kind of interesting, for a lot of mana, though. Dodged Detective is 1 in a black for a 2/1 human rogue, and when it enters the battlefield, you surveil 2, and whenever an opponent draws a card, or draws their second card each turn, you can return it from your graveyard to your hand. And Nether Trader is 2 black for a 1/1 spirit with haste and shadow. Whenever another creature is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, you may pay a black. If you do, return it from your graveyard to the battlefield. And then Reassembling Skeletons, 1 in a black for a 1/1 skeleton warrior. And for 1 in a black, you can return it from your skeleton from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. And Zulu Cutthroats, 1 in a black for a 1/1 human rogue ally. And whenever it or another creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. And Ayara, First of Locthwain, is 3 black for a 2/3 elf noble. Whenever it or another black creature enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses life and you gain a life, and you can tap it to sacrifice a black creature to draw a card. And Braids, Arson, and Nightmare is 1 and 2 black for a 3/3 Nightmare. And whenever and at the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice an artifact, creature, enchantment, land, or planeswalker. And if you do, each opponent may sacrifice the permanent that shares a card type with it. For each opponent who doesn't, that player loses 2 life and you draw a card. Demon's Discipline is 2 in a black for a 3/1 human cleric. When it enters, each player sacrifices creature or planeswalker. Fleshbag is 2 in a black for a 3/1 zombie. When it enters, each player sacrifices a creature. And Merciless Executioner is 2 in a black for a 3/1. When it enters, each player sacrifices a creature. And you're running 9 Nazguls. I'm going to get to that in a second. But Plague's Crafter is 2 in a black for a 3/2 human shaman. When it enters, each player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker, each player who can't discard a card. The thing about these is normally your downside is you're sacrificing them because they're the worst card. But you can just sacrifice your commander, which is cool because then it dies, you get the ring to tempt you, and then you can sacrifice the flesh bag and stuff to return their commander to your hand and recast it, which is fun. And here's the thing. The Nazgul is the big crux. Nazgul is 2 in a black for a 1/2 Wraith Knight with Death Touch. And when the Nazgul enters the battlefield, the ring tempts you. When the ring tempts you, you put a 1/1 counter on each Wraith you control. A deck can have up to 9 cards named Nazgul. So you're running 9 Nazguls, and the ring constantly tempts you. And this is what makes this deck different than the previous Gollum. The previous Gollum was all about gaining life and draining your opponent in a mono black deck, which sucks. It's terrible. Trying to do that is so hard. If it was black-white, it would make sense, but Gollum would never be white. Okay? But Nazguls make this deck cool because it's constantly, since you can constantly tempt yourself super easily, just being able to sack it to something, and then just pay 1 to sacrifice something else and return it to your hand, and then cast it for 2. So for 3, just being able to get the ring to tempt you is cool. And putting it on the Nazguls, who get big but then have Death Touch and have cool stuff, is fine. Okay? But the Nazguls are just constantly after the things, and they keep getting each other bigger. And each buff triggers multiple times. So if you have 3 Nazguls, that's 3 plus 1/1 counters on each of them. So that is your win con. Your win con is the Nazguls. The rest of the deck is built around them. Okay? Pawn of Ulamog is 2 and 2 black for a 2/2 or 1 and 2 black for a 2/2 vampire shaman. When it or another non-token creature you control dies, you make a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature token that you can sack for a colorless. Skullport Merchant's 2 and a black for a 1/4 dwarf citizen, and when it enters, you get a treasure token, and for 1 and a black, you can sacrifice another creature or treasure and draw a card. Woe Strider's 2 and a black for a 3/2 Horror, and when it enters, you make a 0/1 white goat creature token, and you can sacrifice another creature to scry one, and you can escape for 3 and 2 black, and exile 4 other cards. And when you escape with it, it comes in with 2/1 counters, making it a 5/4, which is kind of cool. Erebos, Bleak Hearted, 3 and a black for a 5/6 god with Indestructible, and as long as your devotion to black is 5 or less, it's not a creature, and whenever another creature you control dies, you may pay 2 life. If you do, you draw a card. So since your commander constantly dies, you can just keep paying 2 life to keep drawing cards. And then for 1 in the black, you can sacrifice another creature. Target creature gets -2/-1 until end turn. So you can use hit to sacrifice your commander or your other cards to start interacting with your opponents. Rankle, Master of Pranks, is 2 and 2 black for a 3/3 fairy rogue with flying and haste. And whenever Rankle, Master of Pranks, deals combat damage to a player, choose any number. Each player discards a card, each player loses 1 life, and draws a card, each player sacrifices a creature. This is just kind of a good way to interact with your opponents. You almost always hit someone, and being able to clear their hand and to make them lose creatures is pretty good. You're just going to sacrifice your commander, which will come back. The draw thing I almost never choose, because I don't want them drawing cards. Sifter of Skulls is 3 and a black for a 4/3 Eldrazi with Devoid, and whenever another non-token creature you control dies, you make a 1/1 colorless Eldrazi creature token with sacrifice, add a colorless. And then Smothering Ambitions, 2 and 2 black for a 4/3 Eldrazi with Devoid and Flying, and at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice a creature, and whenever you sacrifice a creature, draw a card. So again, you're sacrificing your commander a lot. He's causing you to sacrifice stuff. That's just a lot of draw. Yawgmoth Ren Physician is 2 and 2 black for a 2/4 human cleric with protection from humans, and you can pay a life and sacrifice another creature, put a -1/-1 counter on target creature control, and then for 2 black, you can discard a card to proliferate. I almost never discard a card to proliferate in this deck, but the whole point is that sacrifice and draw. And then Sir Conrad the Grim is 3 and 2 black for a 5/4 human knight, and when it or whenever another creature dies, or a creature card is put into your graveyard from anywhere other than your hand, or other than the battlefield, or a creature card leaves your graveyard, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. And for 1 in the black, each player mills a card. The cool thing about this is that, or when another creature leaves your graveyard, since you're sacrificing your commander, Sir Con will trigger, and then when you return it, by sacrificing a creature, he'll trigger twice. Once on the sacrifice of the creature, on the creature you sacrifice, and once on the return of Gollum. So lots of damage Sir Conrad can deal. Then you were running 4 sorceries. Bone Shards, 1 black for a sorcery as an additional cost, sacrifice a creature, or discard a card, destroy target creature or planeswalker. Diabolical Intent is 1 in a black for a sorcery as an additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice a creature, search your library for a card, put that card into your hand, then shuffle. Feed the Swarm is 1 in a black for a sorcery, destroy target creature or enchantment. An opponent controls, you lose life equal to the permanent's mana value. You might be wondering, why do I want to run Diabolical Intent? I don't like tutors. I like it in this deck specifically only because it's thematical. I need to sacrifice my commander. This is kind of a fun way to sacrifice it. And being able to go grab Sir Conrad or like a Nazgul, which is kind of like the crux of the deck, or something to be able to sacrifice stuff, it's kind of needed. And Toxic Deluge is 2 in a black for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast a spell, pay X life. All creatures get -X/-X until end turn. It's just good board play. In 8 instances, Calling the Weak is a black for a mana source. Sacrifice a creature, add 4 black to your mana pool, and Dark Ritual for black, you can add 3 black. Again, I normally wouldn't run like Calling Ritual or Calling the Weak in a non-CEDH deck, but again, it's fun because the deck is thematical, right? Dark Ritual is just a good card to get your commander out quickly. Village Rites is a black for an instant that you can, as an additional cost, or 1 black. For an instant, as an additional cost, you cast a spell, you sacrifice a creature to draw 2 cards. Alter the Reap is 1 in a black for an instant, as an additional cost, sacrifice a creature, draw 2 cards. Costly Plunder is 1 in a black for an instant, as an additional cost, sacrifice an artifact or creature, draw 2 cards. Deadly Disputes, 1 in a black for an instant, as an additional cost, sacrifice an artifact or creature, draw 2 cards, create a treasure token. Plumb the Forbidden is 1 in a black for an instant, as an additional cost to cast a spell, you may sacrifice 1 or more creatures. When you do, copy the spell for each creature sacrificed for this way, you draw a card and you lose a life. And then Reckoner's Bargain is 1 in a black for an instant, as an additional cost to cast a spell, sacrifice an artifact or creature, you gain life equal to that sacrifice permanent's mana value, draw 2 cards. Just good draw cards. They pay 1, draw 2, which is technically a draw, right? That's a +1. And then you lose a card on the field, but that's okay, because your commander will come back. And then 10 artifacts. Skull Clamp is 1 generic for an artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1, -1. When equipped creature dies, draw 2 cards, equip 1. Your commander's a 3/1, so you can just keep killing it with Skull Clamp to draw 2 cards. Soul Ring is 1 generic for artifact that taps 2 colorless. Alter Dementia is 2 generic for an artifact that you can sacrifice a creature. Target player puts the top card, puts Numbers of cards equal to the sacrifice creature's power from the top of the library to the graveyard. This is kind of cool for you to self-mill because your commander is 3. Arcane Signet's 2 generic for an artifact, and you can tap it to add a color of your commander's color identity. Felworst turns 2 generic for an artifact, and it taps for any color that your opponents can produce with lands. Mind Stone is 2 generic for an artifact that taps for colorless, or you can pay 1 to tap it and draw a card, sack it and draw a card. Thought Vessel is 2 generic for an artifact that gives you no maximum hand size, but you can tap it for a colorless. Ashnod's Altar is 3 generic for 0, and you can sacrifice a creature you control to add 2 colorless to your mana pool. Crowded Crypt is a great card in this deck. 2 and a black for an artifact you can tap for black, but whenever a creature control dies, you put a corpse counter on Crowded Crypt. 4 and 2 black, corpse counter on Crowded Crypt. That's great. I love that tongue twister. Corpse counter on Crowded Crypt. 4 and 2 black, tap it, sacrifice Crowded Crypt, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token with decayed for each corpse counter on Crowded Crypt. So yeah, this is just like, because you keep sacrificing, eventually you can sacrifice this to just get a lot of zombies and win the game. And you can do that not at sorcery speed, it looks like. So just do this on your opponent's turn for win. On your follow-up turn. And Phyrexian's Altar is 3 generic for an artifact, and sacrifice an artifact, add 1 mana of any, or a creature, add 1 mana of any color. That's just a good way to get your commander back. It's getting up in price though, and I hate that. Proxy. So a lot of that's just sacrifice ways to get your commander back in the graveyard. And reuse his effects. Or re-trigger the ring. So, Phyrexian Reclamations, 5 enchantments. Phyrexian Reclamations, 1 black for an enchantment for 1 and a black. Pay 2 life, return target creature card from your graveyard to hand. This is great. This is just a good way to just get good cards back into your Vampiric Rites is 1 black for an enchantment. For 1 and a black, sacrifice a creature, you gain a life and draw a card. Oversold Cemetery is 2 and a black for an enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 4 or more creatures in your graveyard, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. A great way to just get something back in your hand. You will have 4 or more in your graveyard regularly. Grave Pact is 1 and 3 black for an enchantment. Whenever a creature you control is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, each other player sacrifices a creature. And Dictate of Erebos is 3 and 2 black for an enchantment. Flash, whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent sacrifices a creature. Both of these basically just, with your Gollum, say you guys don't get anything. You sacrifice Gollum, then you return Gollum by sacrifice something. Then you cast Gollum and you sacrifice, no one will have anything on the field. And then lands, the only 2 cool lands other than the 33 swamps are High Market and Phyrexian Tower, which allow you to sacrifice a creature. This, again, is my older format where I don't have my newer cards. You will notice that with the difference. Once I get through Lord of the Rings, my decks get much better. And you might ask why I don't just fix Lord of the Rings. I don't want to. I like seeing where I've improved. And, again, on top of all of that, guys, the big thing that you just need to remember is these, as I say in a lot of my videos, and maybe not as much as I should, these are starting points. I'm not a fan of people cookie cutting. I'm not against it. If you want to cookie cutter a deck, I get it. Like, you're playing competitive, you just want that edge, play whatever there is. But I'm not like that. I make modern decks that my modern friends are all like, "Ew, buddy, what is that? Ew. Gross." They don't like them because they're like modern light. They're like, that, but what is it going to do against this deck? I might go this, and they're like, yeah, but is that good enough? And it's like, probably not, but like, it's a start, and they help me fix them. But I enjoy the concept of building commander decks where the point is, here's a starting point. Here's a bracket 2 deck that has a goal. The goal in this deck, the reason you would run Gollum is if you want a sacrifice deck where it's interesting because of the 1 ring. Okay? Having the ring tempt you is the interesting thing. We are probably never going back to the Lord of the Rings. If we are, it'll be The Hobbit, maybe Rings of Power, but I don't know if we'd get the 1 ring tempts you again, right? Unless they're one-off secret layers, okay? So with that said, there are a few other cards that trigger off the 1 ring, but the main thing is this Nazguls. You could run a few more Wraiths here and there to make the deck a little bit more playable. But the main thing is just the Nazguls, and they're cheap and they're affordable, so you just run those. And then you trigger your commander as much as and often as possible. So the more cards you have that you can sacrifice to do stuff is cool. And then you might go like, well, normally the downside of that is you need a card that can do that can recur itself. Well, you have that. Now you might go, well, aren't you running a bunch of them? Yes, we are. Why? Because you still need them to be able to get this guy back. You need to sacrifice something, okay? So he's both the sacrifice option and the sacrifice outlet, right? Because he's allowing you to, when it leaves the battlefield, the ring tempts you. And technically you can flicker this guy, but sacrifice a creature, return it from your graveyard to your hand, okay? And so, yeah, as long as it dies to something good like Tevish or Skull Clamp, you're going to get more stuff. And there's probably better cards that have been released since then. So take the deck, look at it and go, okay, let's see what good cards there are. You can simply, I think I've shown, if I haven't, you can go to this deck and you can just duplicate. This will put a private version of this deck with the same name but called duplicate, okay? I just ask that you change the name if you want to do it this way. And then your goal is to add the new cards that you like, remove cards you don't like, and edit the deck to make it yours. To make it feel like yours. And then buy it. Or proxy it. Don't buy it if you don't want to. Buying stuff like is expensive. Even if you update everything to the cheapest, it's still a $400 deck. Like, please don't. Oh, that's a cool art. I like that art better anyway. Please don't buy this. I honestly suggest just proxy the crap out of this stuff. It's so much better in that regard. Yeah. That's just my opinion. So, but yeah, that's the deck. That's the concept. That's the goal of the deck. Let me know what you think down below. And let me know if you're excited for the Gollum movie. My hands are up in the air. I have no idea if I'm going to like it or not. Peace.